Welcome to Backstage with Kennedy. This little show will be your remedy. From Toronto, spanning across the sea. Cool people, lots of laughs. This is your favorite podcast.
Hello and welcome. My name's Kennedy from the Backstage with Kennedy podcast. I got a wicked guest today. I got Dennis, or we can call him Denny, but we'll see a little bit why he goes by both names. He's from 10 Foot Pole. Really, really excited for that. I mean, they were legends in the 90s, still legends. Absolutely sick band. Super amped for this one. How you doing, man?
Oh, thanks. I'm doing great. I'm just moving on, like one day at a time, just doing my best. Things are kind of funky these days, so I just kind of take it one step at a time and try to have a good time and protect things, but also enjoy life a little bit.
Absolutely. You're out in California, right? So
I'm in Boise, Idaho. 10 Foot Pole started in Southern California. We grew up in Simi Valley. But over the years, we've, everything's spread out, have different members and everything. But about 13 years ago, I moved to Boise, Idaho for cheap land. And also because my wife's family is all from here.
Okay.
So I'm a touring sound engineer. So not only touring with 10 Foot Pole, but touring with other bands as their sound engineer. I'm gone a lot. And so it just made sense to have her family all around to support, especially now that I have kids and stuff to help out. When I leave town, back in the old days when we used to have tours.
So what's the COVID situation like in Idaho right now? Like, I mean, I know, like, I'm based out of Toronto and it's not great here, but I know that there is hot spots in the US. What's Boise like?
I haven't been looking at the details lately. Things go up and down, and it is a little tricky here because it's in the US, it's kind of like it's a red state, we call it, basically. So a lot of people, to show their support of our national leader, don't wear masks on purpose to make a political statement. So that's changed a lot over time, but there still is a lot of vibe going around of people just kind of trying to be cool and not wear masks. So at least between that and between them restarting school, I don't have kind of expectation that Boise will clear out anytime soon, because there's a lot of religious people and there's a lot of people who are sending their kids to school, and I think kids are just going to go to school and get sick, basically. So I've got my kids home and I'm home and I'm just kind of doing my thing, and we work when we can work, and my wife works a lot. My wife works at Amazon in the nights mostly, moving packages, and so, we are exposed through her, but try to just kind of stay isolated and be careful, and just hopefully Boise on its own will kind of figure it out. As more people get sick, I think more people are taking it seriously and wearing the mask. So
good. Yeah. I always like to make sure that my guests on the show are, healthy and doing well. And man, that's important. That's important. Health is
like find out later that I'm like on my deathbed and you're like, what?
You're like, I have COVID. Oh man.
No, I might have in March. I got really sick when it first came out, and people weren't taking it very seriously. I got really sick, and I was working doing sound in a bar, and it was like high risk.
Yeah.
And for about a week I was gnarly sick and had a cough, but I couldn't get tested because they either didn't have it or wouldn't let me get tested. I didn't have a fever, but I was coughing like crazy and I was pretty gnarly. And then after about a week, I got better. And so it was weird because I shouldn't say it was weird. It was in some ways, I think, good for me, because I came through it okay. It just really put a different perspective on how I view the world, and also to take it seriously so that I didn't like joking around about that kind of stuff. Like if people who have died, it's no joke anymore.
No,
So
exactly.
Having gone through that and kind of like literally I was like looking at my life insurance and trying to get things in order so that I know it sounds funny, but I have an acoustic record coming out, and I wanted to make sure that if I went, at least my family and stuff would you know, who knows? Maybe 10 Foot Pole would be really famous if I perished right at the time that this album came out, like Sublime.
Yeah.
Sublime didn't really get big until the singer died, and
Mm-hmm.
which is, and that's kind of a thing. It's like you get a lot of attention, something happens, and then people go, "Oh wow, I really like that song," and that's kind of how music is. It's like what makes something go viral.
Yeah.
And in those days, going viral was people on the radio going like, "Wow, I really like this tune. Let's play it." And then all of a sudden, millions of people love it. And of course, then it's too late. The guy's already gone.
So you mentioned an acoustic album. I mean, I know 10 Foot Pole. You guys have an album coming out. You already dropped Sarcasm Decoder, which is wicked, by the way.
Oh,
And
glad you like it.
and you got Scars coming out. I think next week it is. So obviously you guys have been pretty busy, and I'm seeing a lot of acoustic stuff kind of trending with you right now. Is this like going to be a new thing for 10 Foot Pole? A lot of acoustic stuff?
Well, as a touring sound engineer, I started playing acoustic guitar because it was the only way I could have fun playing by
Hmm.
myself. A few years back, I tried to bring like electric guitars on tour or travel guitars, and I just wasn't that motivated to play. Like it wasn't that interesting to me to play all by myself with distortion. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, it wasn't fun.
Yeah.
And a few years ago, I got a nice acoustic guitar and started carrying it, and I mean, I didn't think people would want to listen to it, but I just enjoyed playing. It was like, oh, this is cool. I can play, and I don't need a drummer. I don't need the whole band, and it still sounds like our song. And so while I was touring around with bands, I started kind of sneaking out, like on sidewalks or in parking garages, and I started getting positive feedback enough to where I started actually doing like little shows and things. And that just was like mind blowing that like there were people who liked the acoustic stuff better than the full band.
Hmm.
And so I started doing acoustic shows, and at least right now, like the basic plan is for me, I kind of get bored with things quick. So the basic plan is just to flip between them.
Hmm.
Like I spent the last year making the acoustic record. I'm the producer and the mixer on the record too. So I
Hmm.
was like fully into it. Because of the COVID situation, I was home where normally I would give it to a different producer and try to get help. In this case, I was like, well, what's the worst that can happen is my mix can suck, and then I can call a friend and say, hey, can you mix this record, right?
Hmm.
So I just basically trial and errored it for months, like literally months of like, well, does this sound good? Let's try this. Um, and so in the end, I was happy with the result. But that year of like acoustic, built up for me this hunger to play distorted guitar. So for
Yeah.
the last few months, I think Simmer Down was mastered in early July. So since July 5th, I've just been playing like distorted guitar like crazy. And it's just, for me, it's kind of like you get bored with one thing and you just want to try something different. And that thing of switching back and forth, I think that's kind of the future for us, is
Hmm.
like make a rock record, and then when you're sick of distorted guitar and sick of drums and bashing cymbals and all the noise,
Hmm.
like let's go to acoustic and just really like strip it down and intimate. And now that I know that Simmer Down could sound good, I mean, of course it depends if other people like it, but I'm pretty sure that some people will like this as long as they give it a listen.
Yeah.
And and so not only with recording but also playing live, like I hope that um it gets really tiring traveling with a band and all the expense involved with being in a band. And so I want to try to keep doing acoustic shows, even if it's tiny, like in people's backyards.
Yeah.
And so like I've done that in Quebec City area in Ontario, um, just tiny venues, and it's fun. So
Yeah.
as long as it's fun and I'm not losing money and I make a few bucks, so that's kind of my, I don't know. I mean, I have to look at it in terms of like, do I want to get a real job, or is there some way that I could make this be like kind of my, I say retirement, but I don't plan on ever retiring. But I
Yeah.
look at it as like, do I want to join my wife at Amazon and be hustling boxes all night for 10 hours and like getting really sore, or could I play in somebody's backyard and have 20 or 30 people just be stoked and
Yeah.
they buy some merch? And so that's how I see it, as like flipping back and forth. Like when I get sick of acoustic, then we go, just go electric for a while. So depending how the pandemic goes, I might do like a cross Canada acoustic tour in April,
Sick.
rehearse the band in May in Quebec, because my drummer lives in Quebec and my guitarist has a girlfriend in Quebec. So really we should go to Quebec.
That's headquarters.
And yeah, so maybe play some shows,
Yeah.
get the band ready, because we have shows booked next summer in Europe. So we
Okay.
have like actual festival, like real shows, and I need to rehearse the band because right now we're all isolated.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's just kind of in the back of my mind is like, how do I get to Quebec? Well, I could fly there, or I could play and stop in every town and hamlet if only I could find someone who wants to have a party at their house.
Yep.
So
exactly.
that's kind of the vision. Now, whether that could happen, I don't know. But if things go well and people like Simmer Down,
Yeah. Hell yeah.
maybe so.
So on the song Sarcasm Decoder, I saw Dan Palmer from Zebrahead and Death by Stereo was in it.
Yeah, we really wanted his mustache. He's okay on guitar, but the main thing is that stash. Like once, especially on the video, like once you put that in the video, it's like, guaranteed to.
I'm trying to do some sort of Dan Palmer, but it's not working out.
Our drummer has a similar to you, has kind of something like that going. He's from Quebec and he has a tattoo shop. But one really cool thing about Simmer Down that I found out that I didn't really know before was that our drummer has this really smooth voice. And for acoustic, it's just great. Like my guitarist Scott Hallquist used to sing like all the backup vocals, but me and Scott both have these really mid-range vocals. To use an example, you can hear Scott singing on Kicked Out of Kindergarten and Set List, and you could just like his voice pokes through like that, and my voice pokes through. And but now we found out that with Guillaume on drums, his voice is like it's like the Eagles are singing along with you. Like his voice is soft and wide, and like when you put a few different versions of it, it becomes this chorus. Whereas mine's like, how did the cat get so, how? Mine's more like that. So that's one saving grace of Simmer Down is I just put Guillaume singing all over the place, and like it's just you hear a little of it in Sarcasm Decoder. In Scars, it's going to be like one reason I chose Scars was because of Guillaume having these like big vocal whoa parts.
I think a lot of people people have a lot to look forward to on this album. It's sounding really good. Just I love the idea of this. This sounds great. So I got a bunch of questions for you today, but so when you guys started out, like you specifically, I guess, when you started out, your inspirations would obviously be very different from my inspirations just based on what we were raised on. So what was your inspiration? And I guess for 10 Foot Pole, what were your biggest influences as a band for your sound that you guys kind of created and are known for?
You mean like my reason for being in a band in the first place?
Yeah, like what were you listening to a lot when you first started being in a band?
When I was a kid, I really loved music and listened to it kind of all the time. And my dad built inertial navigation systems for missiles and things. He worked for NASA and then Lytton, like he did defense contractor work. But on the side, he had this film company, and he also started doing audio and stages. Mm-hmm. And so I got a hold of the audio equipment in the garage when I was 9 or 10 years old and started goofing around with it. And I'll just give one example. So I hooked up these giant speakers, like 10-foot high speakers in the garage, to pump Ernie out onto the street so that all the junior high school kids in my area would know how cool I was with that na 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 song, loving, touching, squeezing. So at the time that I was 10, I thought that was like the coolest thing ever. Like, people are going to know how cool I am because I like Journey. But as I got older, my tastes changed into like harder stuff like Black Sabbath and Iron Maiden, and then I kind of was introduced to punk in the junior high school era, and I got an electric guitar, and before I could really even play it, I was in Scott's garage. Scott Rudinsky was our drummer originally, and I was in Scott's garage. In fact, I met him like he was the drummer, and my friend introduced me. He's like, yeah, Dennis just got a new guitar, and he wants to be in a band. So I guess I'd say my inspiration was love of music and wanting attention.
Okay.
I mean, to be honest, I wanted girls to notice me. I was like a 14-year-old awkward kid with a big nose, and um, that was just something cool. Like, especially back in those days, like music was like, it was kind of a rock star era where people would see bands on stage, and it was just like, yeah, I want all that attention and glory, and then the more I did it, the more it became more about I want to write a great song. Like I want to, write a cool message and have things be interesting. And so over the years, my goals have changed, but I still just love doing it. I still love music, and the cool thing about music is it doesn't matter how good you are, because you can always use what you do know to make something that's interesting to people.
Mhm.
Like a band like the Ramones is not, those aren't jazz musicians who are like technically superior. They're just kind of like playing like fairly simple stuff, but then they write these really interesting lyrics, and they have an energy that just people love them. And so you don't have to be, um, a prog rock or metal, like crazy time signature kind of band in order to entertain people. And that was really cool. As a 13-year-old who didn't know much about how to play guitar, was like, oh wow, I can just play some chords and say, oh, I don't care about you, and yeah, so here I am still like goofing around trying to learn how to play guitar.
So when I was young, there was a video game called Matt Hoffman's BMX. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I loved that game. I used to go over to my uncle's house and play it for like hours on end. You guys were featured in that. How cool is it to see yourself in a video game? Was that one of those points where you're like, wow, that's pretty damn sick?
We made it. It's time to just get houses in Malibu and retire. Um, like looking back at it, I mean, it was just like good news would come in, like, oh yeah, we're on Tony Hawk's video thing, and it'd be like,
Yeah.
oh cool. But it was just kind of like that. It was like Epitaph was just this wave of stuff rolling, and it was amazing and great, but we didn't have time to really think about it or revel in it. It was just kind of like, we're a band. Well, we also had a lot of conflict at the time because our singer was a baseball player.
Yeah.
So, right when Rev was going huge, we had just toured with No Effects, and the Offspring was taking off. They were selling 7 million records, and then our singer was going back and playing baseball, and was like, we may not play again ever. Like we didn't know. Like he's going to be gone for baseball at least 10 months.
Yeah.
At least 10 months. And so I'm thinking, how do I hold the band together for 10 months or maybe 2 years? Like we didn't know. So that's what led to us switching over and me becoming the singer eventually, was wanting to be able to play. We just wanted to have fun and play. So for better or for worse, we started that whole process, and I ended up being the singer. I was always the song. I shouldn't say always, but I was the principal lyric writer.
Yeah.
And like about half the music on, like nearly all the lyrics on Rev, and about half the music on Rev was from me.
Okay.
And so it just eventually, to make a long story short, it made sense to have me move into that position rather than to bring in someone else who might suddenly become a pro ball player or something and be busy all the time. But we just wanted to play. We were kids.
Yeah.
We were just stoked. Like our band is on, whatever video games and snowboarding videos, and
Mhm.
and people want, like the Offspring wanted us to open for them, and we had to turn it down when Scott was a singer, and that was kind of for us the last straw. Was like, wow, the Offspring's going to play to thousands of people every night, and we could be on the stage playing with them, but our singer's a pro ball player, and
Yeah.
our way of dealing with that was like, well, we got to fix this.
And I think it worked out. I think it worked out.
I'm glad you
So
think so.
you've obviously played a ton of shows over the years. What is, if you could put down like your favorite, most memorable show, what would that be? Like your most memorable show, I guess. Yeah.
Oh wow. Um, the one that I remember the most lately for us, maybe because we have a bunch of great pictures from it, is we just opened for Millencolin in
Mhm.
Trois-Rivières in Quebec. So as I'm getting older, my memory of my most memorable show only goes back a year or something, and but I mean that was just amazing. It's hard to put one, because the reality is, for me, I don't dwell on the past that much. I mostly just look forward to the next one.
Yeah.
And every show, as if someone's enjoying the show and it didn't suck,
Yeah.
it's great. Like whether there's 30 people or 3,000 people, it's still like if people are having a good time and I wasn't like sick and had a bad voice or something that would wreck the show for me,
Mm-hmm.
it's a good show. And in fact, that's why I want to do tours in people's houses. Like
Yeah.
I played shows inside Vince Boussier's house, and it was one of the best shows we ever had. We had my bass player at the time, Chris Del Rio, was singing on one side of this bar. We had a split, and we had half the audience on Team Del Rio and half the audience on Team Jaggard. And while we were playing, we had this kind of little like little rivalry going on. And some of the audience members, like if I did something crappy, they'd like walk over to Chris's side in the audience. And vice versa. Like if I hit like a nice long note, people would be like, "Oh, that was pretty cool. I'm gonna move over to Team Dennis." Like just silly things like that make it fun.
Yep.
It's just like just singing and having a good time. And anytime people appreciate the songs I wrote, to me that's a great day.
Absolutely. So TFP, you've obviously had a lot of different members in the bands. And I know that can be really tough for a lot of bands because there's the creative ideas that come in. Everybody's got their different ideas and creative input, right? So how has it been? How tough has it been to really keep that TFP sound and like stick to what you guys know and do it very well, opposed to going in different directions, which can I think easily happen when you do have many different band members.
Yeah, I think having me as the primary lyricist and songwriter has kind of given it a continuity over the years. And then I actually invite the guys to write as much as they can and or at least submit. I ask the guys to submit ideas, like especially back in the day, like the goal was write 100 songs, because we heard that from Green Day once. That one time they said Green Day wrote an album and their producer listened to it and said, this really isn't special. What you guys should do is write 100 songs, and then the best 12 songs would be your record. And
Wow.
And that at least that's what my friend said, who was friends with them, so I assume it's true. That became American Idiot.
Mm-hmm.
So so we try to make that our goal of like, don't just like barely write enough songs and then put out a record. Try to write like a whole bunch and then take the cream of the crop and go. And so there were times like for example, Subliminal Messages. I actually like signed the guys up with a song when we were in LA. There was a songwriter workshop. Harriet Schock actually was she had this great kind of method for building your own songs,
Mm-hmm.
like kind of a step-by-step method. And so I actually signed up. Mike Levy and Kevin Ruggieri went and took that class, and like Mike's song was Last Call for Russell's Balls. Like he wrote that through the course of the song. And Kevin wrote a few songs. I'm not sure. I don't remember which was his song. It might have been Wake Up Ocean, or no, The Quest for the Perfect Song. Maybe it was The Quest for the Perfect Song. But anyway, my point being, like I try to get the guys to do stuff, and then sometimes it doesn't rise to the cream of the crop, to put it diplomatically. But as far as styles, I don't really know. I think part of the style is like limitations of just like that's what we like and that's kind of what we play. Escalating quickly, we kind of went a lot more poppy because we wanted to mix it up a little bit. I wanted to bring in a lot of Dan Palmer kind of guest guitarists to just shred and do things that we wouldn't have thought of,
Mm-hmm.
to make things different and interesting and fun. And Ryan Green, the producer, played keyboards on it even and stuff. And I was kind of like, let's just go with it, Ryan. Like, surprise me. Like, what can we do? Because we've already had made like 8 10-foot pole records.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, it's kind of like, what can we do to change things up and make it exciting? And that's where the Simmer Down is like really changing up. Let's make it acoustic.
Yeah. And
you'll see on Scars, it's even just like a very different version of Scars. Like Scars on Setlist is just this ripping anthem song. And on Simmer Down, it's a poignant, mellow, like it's beautiful, but it's like a sad ballad, and it's and I love it,
Yeah.
but I love that it's different, and so there's a few that are like that. Like the whole album isn't all sad ballads. Don't worry though. Like, there's the Sarcasm Decoder is kind of one end of the spectrum, and
Yeah.
Scars is the other, and there's a lot of different things in between. But to me, that's kind of the fun of it, is like, just try something different and go. And the songs I'm writing right now, like a lot of them are almost 80s punk. Like I'm writing some, speaking of Ramones, like I'm writing some like just fairly simple stuff, but then also some kind of metal songs. And I don't know what's going to make it to the record. Like I'm just,
100 songs. 100 songs.
it's going to be aggressive though. Like I guarantee that, just because Simmer Down and Escalating Quickly were both kind of more poppy and mellow, it's time for like, a kick to the nuts, if you will.
So then your name, Denny or Dennis? Let's
Okay. Well, the band member name is Dennis. So like my actual name is Dennis, and then Denny is my name as Denny the Friendly Sound Guy. So I'm a sound engineer, sound tech, and I mentioned my dad had that company. So when I was a kid, I didn't want to ever be called Junior. I just hated the diminutive vibe of that, and so people would call the house when I was a kid, and they'd be like, well, Big Dennis or Little Dennis, or it's just so annoying. I mean, just having the name Dennis already is like, it's just brutal. But then to be Little Dennis is like double whammy. So anyway, I decided that in the sound industry, I would embrace the friendly, nerdy sound of Denny and just go with it. Like as a kid and in the band, that sounded kind of too like effeminate, friendly for my tough guy ego.
Yeah.
But by the time I was running the sound company, like when I was 20 years old, I was more kind of confident and comfortable. I'd already been like a champion wrestler, and I was like, I'm strong. I'm not worried about being considered weak. And so I was like, you know what? I bet I'll sell more sound if I'm just, hey, I'm Denny, and I never have to say Big Dennis or Little Dennis. They're either asking for Denny or Dennis. And if they say Denny, that's me. So that's where that went. Do you want to know, you want to hear a Prince story that's related to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So in my sound business, I've done sound with a lot of different acts on tour, and like so far the biggest act I did was Prince, and I worked with him for quite a while, but of course I went by Denny, and so I'm going to tell the story of my nickname that it kind of never happened, but it almost happened. It would have been pretty sweet. Anyhow, when I was fairly new to working with Prince, his band was rehearsing in a house in the Hollywood Hills, kind of West Hollywood area. And when I say house, it was more like it was a ginormous mansion thing. And there was a ballroom, and the ballroom had really low ceilings with these kind of round things in the ceiling, and there were mirrors on the walls, and there was a whole PA in there, but it wasn't like a pro PA. It was like different speakers and different. The reason I'm telling you all this detail is that I don't want you to get I want you to have 100% confidence that I'm a great audio technician, in case anyone's watching this and going, man, I don't know if I should hire Denny, because one time he had a feedback problem. So anyway, I'll try to cut to the chase. The keyboard, in hindsight, so the band was playing, and there was a little ring, a little kind of thing, and so I'll explain a little more. So they didn't have in-ear monitors like most modern bands have in-ear monitors, and they have someone mixing their monitors. Like it's very like spread out. But with Prince, I was the only sound engineer, and they had wedges, which means that the sound's coming up all around them. So it's very loud, and with a low ceiling and with wedges and different types of speakers, it's very common to have feedback issues. Mm-hmm. And in fact, just to prove that I know, or that I have a pretty good idea of what's going on, it ended up that I went in and found the speaker that was causing trouble, and it was Morris's speaker, which was stage left keyboard, and he had a Mackie speaker, which is not really a pro monitor anyway, up on a tripod, and it was going across the room and causing an 800 hertz feedback from Prince's mic. But for me to figure that out, I had to have no one there and spend like a half hour messing around, figuring out like, because people just say more. I want more of my vocal, more of my vocal, and then all of a sudden things start going like, "Ooh," like you start getting rings, and that's because of the mirrors on the walls and the low ceilings, and also because Prince talks quietly. So Morris had to have his mic up really loud so he could hear him when he goes, "Morris, I want you to play a C minor here," you know. So anyway, long story short is the whole band's practicing, and all of a sudden there's a little, "Ooh," and Prince just stops and he goes, "Denny," and he goes, "You need to take care of that, because if you don't, if I hear that feedback one more time, I'm going to give you a nickname and you will never work in this industry again. I'm going to call you Denny Feedback." And like part of me is like, "Oh my God, he's so pissed." But then the other part of me was like, "Yeah, Denny Feedback." Like, wouldn't that be rad? You know, if I was like known through the industry as Denny Feedback, and I'd be like, get the guitar out and be like, "Woo!" Anyway.
The new it's the then you change your stage name.
Exactly. I would just be like Feedback all the time. "Woo, ladies and gentlemen, Denny Feedback." But anyway, what I really said was, "I'm sorry, sir, it won't happen again." And that was the end of it because I fixed it. Well, I mean, the easy way to fix feedback is turn things down.
Yeah.
So I had to. Like, I turned things down a little bit, even though they don't necessarily really want that. The next day, I went in an hour before everyone or two and found it and notched it out and like made it all good. And I kept working for him for more than a year after that. So in case anyone thinks, wow, this guy wasn't even good to keep Prince happy, I did for a year and a half, really.
Still doing
Like,
it.
yeah. Well, I ended up quitting because it was hard to do monitors, and I knew that eventually a show would get wrecked because he kept making the band bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and it just got to be too much work for one person to do. So as I told him, I said, I'd rather have you be mad at me for quitting than mad at me for wrecking a show. Like, I don't, especially if it's a big show. Like, what if a million, like what if people ask for their money back?
Yeah.
You know, and there's like $1 million on the line. I don't want to be responsible for that.
No, that would not be good. That would not be good. So,
I mean,
okay.
I was trying to get him to hire a monitor engineer, but kind of hard to tell
Prince
to do. The fact is, though, I quit and then he got a monitor engineer. But anyway, and then I went back. That's a long story too. That's a whole other day. I just like throwing in one Prince story so that you can say on your little blurb, yeah, Denny talks about Prince. And then if there's a Prince fan, they don't care about 10-foot pole, but they're like, I got to watch this thing because he's going to talk about Prince.
That's hilarious. So obviously people can find your music on all platforms. And you guys do have a lot of music coming out. You did just release Sarcasm Decoder, so people can check that out already. Where there's a pre-save link, right? Where can people find that stuff?
The best place to find our music is the easiest place to remember is just 10footpole.com. Okay. So TEN, it's spelled TEN rather than the numeral 10, TENFOOTPOLE.com. And I think right when you first go there, the first page is news. I haven't checked this myself yet, but usually the very first news piece will be like the most recent thing, like what you're saying. So if you look at the news and you scroll down in time, you'll see today was this pre-save link for the song Scars. Probably the previous news item was Sarcasm Decoder's video. It was a kind of silly video. And so that's the best place to start. And then if you want to get skateboard decks or you want to see other stuff, I'm going to put a memorabilia page there too. Especially with the pandemic, things have been really hard for, I bought a tour van. So like to make payments on the tour van in hopes that someday I can cruise to your backyard and play an acoustic show. Yeah. I'm selling all my old stuff. So like I went through the garage and found like all the old, not even just 10-foot pole shirts, like No Effect shirts and Lagwagon. And like I'm selling guitars, amplifiers. I haven't put the page up yet, but that's where it'll be, is 10footpole.com, to try to get collectors to be like, oh, I want that old Rev CD that was released in Japan. Like it's got all the Japanese writing and everything on it. Like everything I could find in my garage, it's not doing me any good. I might as well sell it and keep the tour van.
Sounds good. I'm with you, man. Well, I hope I'm definitely going to come see you play when you come to Toronto when the apocalypse is over here. And yeah, we'll definitely get together and have a pint or two for sure.
Yeah, or maybe we'll do it in your backyard if you have a yard.
I have a small I live in an apartment, like a triplex.
Hey,
We got a small
your
parking
neighbors will love
lot,
it.
so we'll make it happen.
No, I have done things like on the roof of apartments or in like a parking garage of an apartment. Or I mean, there's often like other places you could do it that's just kind of like a brewery or a public place. For me, the main requirement is just that it's quiet. And
Yeah,
I think I'll bring a couple of speakers so that, even if it's a bigger place, it'll project a little bit. But I'm dead serious about like I
yeah,
mean, maybe I'll have the whole band with me, but I doubt it. I think it's more likely I would just drive through. And if you know somebody who wants to put on a show
yeah,
and like, if you could get friends to chip in or whatever and
yeah.
anyway, I'm just trying to sell it hard so that people see this and go like, I want that guy to sing in my backyard and tell Prince stories.
We will make it happen. We will make it happen.
I,
You're
I
talking
should
to the
warn you,
right
I
guy.
do like monologuing stuff. Like as you can tell, once I get talking, I kind of enjoy the storytelling time. And that's kind of what the acoustic act is kind of like telling some stories, playing some songs. Sometimes I'll just stop in the middle of the song and talk about the lyrics, oh, I wrote this song and I just remember that happened, or I'll ask the audience like, does anyone have any questions? Let's open it up, because my life's an open book. I mean, there may be something I refuse to answer, but so far I don't think I've ever just refused to answer.
Yeah, you're like, let's let's avoid that.
Yeah, it could be like Ryan Adams, where some people go just to troll him. Like some people literally buy a ticket to a Ryan Adams concert and then they shout out songs to heckle him because he hates when people ask for songs that aren't on the set list. Just
Yeah.
hates it. And he might have a meltdown, kick the monitor, and just leave the stage. So people buy tickets helping him out just to go, hoping that he has a meltdown and wrecks the show. So, maybe people will like,
People want to do that to you.
yeah, people come to the acoustic show just to punish me. Luckily, I have a song called Don't Be a Dick. And so typically if I do get a heckler, I'll sing that song and then I don't even have to say anything. I can just get the audience to sing along and most hecklers will back off. Like if the whole audience is going, "Don't be a dick, Joe with the beard," or whatever. Joe with the red hat, don't be, But anyway, I wrote that song to remind myself to be nice, but it's great there's so many utility things like,
Well,
mostly myself. Like if I'm about to have road rage and I'm about to like do something that's likely to cause someone else to escalate, in the back of my head, I just start singing. Don't be a dick.
well,
Don't interrupt your wife when she's saying a good, whatever it is.
all right, man. So I'm gonna wrap it up. I do like to keep these nice and short and sweet. Denny, I appreciate you coming on the podcast, man. Thanks a ton, and yeah, definitely when you come to Toronto, we're having a beer. We'll get the show going. We'll make it happen.
Oh, thank you, Kennedy, and hope to see you and really appreciate the invitation to be on it.
Thanks, man. Always. You take care.